Hey guys, welcome back to Hands On channel. Today we're going to continue on in our series about our disappearing civil liberties here in America. Some of this stuff's just going to be based on my own personal beliefs and my opinions and stuff, and if you're of the mindset that you don't like to hear other people's opinions that might be different than yours or from the mainstream narrative, then you're probably not going to like this. So consider yourself warned. We're going to get right into it. This is part 2 in the series though, so if you haven't seen the first video, be sure to go back and watch that video first, because otherwise it's not going to really set the groundwork for a lot of this stuff. So let's get right into it here. Samuel Adams warned us, "The liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution are worth defending against all hazards, and it is our duty to defend them against all attacks." I mean, that's pretty much in your face. I'm telling you right there. I mean, this is Samuel Adams, one of the most important founders of the country here. Go look it up for yourself if you don't believe me. But man, I'm telling you, that's kind of the way I'm feeling right now. And I'm feeling that our civil liberties are being attacked on a daily basis, especially at the state and local level. This is part 2 in a series about violations of our constitutional liberties. Most of these infringements upon our God-given rights are being done at the state and local levels. Some are coming up from the federal level. Let us question everything with boldness. Remember, these are my opinions based on my experiences and beliefs, and here are some examples of our disappearing liberties. Number 1, religious liberties. Pastors around the nation are being arrested for preaching to groups of more than 10. We'll go ahead and do the next one. At least 2 pastors arrested in Florida and 1 in Louisiana for violating the social distancing order. Again, you know, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't practice social distancing or anything like that, but one of the key fundamental things in Christianity anyways, I'm not sure about other religions, but Christianity, and I'm sure probably other religions as well, you know, it's to be able to go to the house of God and worship as you see fit. So, in my opinion, this is a direct violation of the First Amendment. I'm going to read the First Amendment, and then we'll talk about what it means, at least to me, my interpretation of this. And again, I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm a mechanic, but I've got a pretty good head on my shoulders, and I'm willing to read this stuff and interpret it because that's one of the things I love about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, is that in the time they actually wrote those things so that the common man would be able to know the law and know his rights. And we have forgotten a lot of that stuff because, you know, either we're just lazy or teachers aren't teaching it these days or something, or they're not putting enough emphasis on it. And I think some of that's due to the curriculum that is selected. But anyways, let's continue on. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. So as it relates to the religion, or the religious liberties right here, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That's the important part right there as it pertains to what we're talking about right up front here. So, in my opinion, we're already violating the First Amendment. And you might say, well, wait a second. It says Congress shall make no law. And you're right, it does specify Congress shall make no law. But it is implied all throughout the Constitution that every other law in the nation should abide the Constitution. And if they do not abide the Constitution, they are unconstitutional. Therefore, they are null and void. I don't understand why it's so hard to grasp this stuff for the politicians. And I think I do know, actually. I know the answer. I think I know. It's because they don't bother to read it. I don't know if you can see him up here, but it's one of the things that Dr. Ron Paul was famous for. They called him Dr. No. And I've got actually a funny picture somewhere in some of my pictures that I've saved, and it said, why do you vote no? It says up at the top, why do you vote no on all the bills? And at the bottom it says, because I read them. That is the problem. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you heard about your state and local Congress not even reading bills? They're just being put forth by these lobbyists and stuff, and these special interest groups, basically written by these people. And then the congressman comes, writes his name on it, and they have a big celebration, and they all vote for each other and pretend like they're doing something good for the United States. And in most cases, it's not. Yes, it says Congress shall make no law. One could argue that Congress didn't make these laws, but it doesn't matter. The law on the state level has to abide by the Constitution, or they are null and void. I said that twice because I think it's important and it's worth repeating, because apparently the people that are making laws right now, they don't understand that. Number 2, Nanny State. I mean, this is a big one. This has been bothering me for a long time. I see it all around me, all over the place are examples of the Nanny State. And as you guys know that have been following the channel for a while, I'm a mechanic and I'm a DIY guy. I do all of my own repairs. I mean, 99.99% of the stuff that I do, you guys don't even get to see. But I mean, even then, I barely ever pay anybody to come do repairs for me because I just do them myself, or I learn how to do them. That being said, that gives me a little bit of an insight on how some of these Nanny State laws have actually real world consequences. Like, for example, we put in a washing machine one time 2 or 3, 4 years ago now, and it was one of these new EPA Energy Star washing machines. Our old one had quit. It had been working for us for years, no problems. And no problems with any of the plumbing, no problems with anything. We put this EPA washer in, guess what happens? It started water hammering. I finally had to buy water arresters, and even that didn't work. And they were telling me I needed to hire a plumber to come out here and put a giant water arrestor on my system. I'm like, no, it used to work just fine with the old one. What's the deal? Well, the EPA had regulated that you have to have a certain temperature water in the bowl down there, or you're wasting energy. So what did they do as a solution? They had a solenoid that went shh, boom, shh, boom, shh, boom, and it sent shock waves throughout this plumbing system. Now you tell me, did they really think about the consequences of their actions, or did they just implement a rule and say, here you go, you guys have to deal with it? Another great example of that real quick are the EPA gas cans. They're stupid ridiculous. And I could go on and on and on all day long and make this entire video about nothing but Nanny State violations where they have come in and decided that they have to take care of you and me. I didn't ever ask them for that, and I don't believe you did either. We're supposed to be independent people here. So anyways, let's get back to the Nanny State here and what I've written down. Unconstitutional lockdown shelter-in-place orders have been implemented in most states. In fact, I heard earlier today that there are only 9 states left that haven't implemented some sort of a lockdown order. And the woman that was doing the interview, she goes, oh, by the way, those are all run by Republicans. And it was in about that much of a tone. It was in about that tone. So, yeah. Typical for the media, the mainstream media. Some states have closed their borders. No one in or out. And I'm mainly talking about New York. I don't know if New Jersey did or what. I don't know. I don't know all the basically that side, that northeastern side of the United States to me is lost because it's just so full of the progressive viewpoint. Let's just leave it at that. Anti-constitutional viewpoint, anti-American viewpoint, in my opinion. Oh yeah, by the way, you can go in and out, you can travel if you're deemed essential. I mean, and some of this stuff that they're deeming essential versus non-essential is just ridiculous when you start getting down to the brass tacks of it. I mean, does this remind anyone of Escape from New York? I mean, come on. Are they just doing every sci-fi movie they can and like throwing them into a big bucket and pulling out every day? They're pulling out a different one. Oh, today it's going to be 1984. Oh, okay. Today it's going to be Escape from New York. I don't know what they're thinking, but it's like all of these movies are coming to life all of a sudden. Michigan has banned travel between residences. You can't go to your neighbor's or family's house anymore. So, as my wife pointed out, we have a nurse in our family. Well, what if I needed to go visit the nurse and I couldn't get into a doctor because they say that my immediate need is not essential, and instead they're going to block off the hospital and not let me come in there? I mean, are they thinking about this stuff or what? I would argue no. Definitely not thinking about liberty. Boston suburbs threaten $100 fine for anyone walking the wrong direction. Apparently they've got it cordoned off and you have to walk a certain direction. If you don't walk that direction, you have to pay the man $100. In Florida, a Marine vet, this one really bugged me. He's got a good video up on it, and if I can, I'll figure out a way to link this down in the description because I want you guys to go watch this video and support this channel. Not my channel. I'm talking about the channel that I'm going to send you to. In Florida, a Marine vet was threatened with a $500 fine for sitting on the beach outside of his home. Outside of his home. He has a right in his contract to access that beach, but not anymore, they say. He was social distancing. No one was around him, at least from the video that I saw. No one was around him except for a bunch of cops and a couple of wannabe or whatever they would call those guys, security cops, rent-a-cops, those guys. Sometimes those guys are notorious for getting a big chip on their shoulder. When they get a little bit of authority, they feel like they got to, make everybody respect that authority, so be aware of that. So he was social distancing, no problems there. He wasn't violating anything like that. The police told him, or the rent-a-cop told him, walking is permitted, no sitting. Sitting is not allowed. And he was like, well, I'm taking a break here, I need a rest or whatever. And no, can't do that. I mean, who comes up with this arbitrary stuff? So you're more likely to pass the coronavirus if you're sitting than if in one place, and nobody's around you, than if you're walking where you could possibly walk past someone. Asinine. Fines and jail time are used as deterrent for the sheeple. Remember, to be a good little sheep, you must obey the authorities. Bah. Sad, man. Meanwhile, convicted criminals are being released from prison for their protection. Not mine and yours, for their protection. I don't like that. New York's Monroe County has released from prison 8 registered sex offenders, including 3 convicted of child rape, to stop the spread of coronavirus. So they're really looking out for our safety. They're letting those rapists out 8 at a time up there in that county. Who knows how many other counties up there have let people out? Who knows? Does that make you feel safer? Okay, where were we? You can look any of this stuff up. I pulled all of this stuff from the headlines. Many cities and states have implemented draconian travel restrictions within state borders. Fines and jail time if you're caught. Travel permission papers are being required in some states. Does it get any more Nazi than papers, please? Espionage and surveillance. Surveillance on U.S. citizenry has been cranked up to maximum levels. New York Police Department releases Orwellian video of drones spying on citizens to enforce social distancing. They're releasing drones, man. I mean, does that not get your hackles up about your liberty? Maybe it's not happening in your state, but it's happening in another state of the union, and that should concern you deeply. It does me anyways. GPS ankle tracking monitors are being used on the infected against their will. This is a big one here. Pay attention to this. Bill Gates, eugenicist, and Dr. Fauci, Clinton appointee, are pushing for microchip implants or an immunity card before you are allowed to travel freely. I don't know how that ends well. Doublespeak is openly being used to hide the truth, making surveillance an easier pill to swallow. So my wife, she was like, oh my gosh, you got to hear this thing. I just heard this interview, and we had to look it up and find it. It was on PBS, a recent broadcast of the show Firing Line. Guest Scott Gottlieb, or Gottlieb, however you say it. He replied to the following question. When asked to describe what a national surveillance system would look like, Gottlieb says, yeah, I think in retrospect we shouldn't have used the word surveillance because it has the wrong connotation. Really what we were talking about is health monitoring. He goes on to say surveillance doesn't mean the same thing in medicine, but I ain't buying it. Surveillance is surveillance. So they're telling you you're going to have some kind of a identifier, a card or a chip. So it's basically, the reason I put it in that order is because in my opinion, this Gottlieb thing and his plan for, what are they calling it? Plan for recovery, I believe they call it. And he's supposedly sent this to President Trump. I hope Trump takes a real hard look at this because I'm not sure I trust this guy. Again, on the medical field, on the medical side of things, I'm sure he's probably on the up and up. But, as far as having surveillance on people, hey, sir, you're a doctor. You're not my representative. I didn't vote for you. You don't get to decide my rights, and my health care rights are my rights to have and to share at my will, not at yours. Cell phone companies are working on newer, more sophisticated and invasive tracking software. 5G pinpoint tracking legislation was recently approved by Congress while we were distracted by the plague panic. A lot of times when something big's going on, it's always that old sucker punch move in boxing. You move this hand and you nail them with this one, or opposite. It's a sucker punch, or you sneak up behind somebody and you hit them where they don't even know it. That's a sucker punch. And that's oftentimes how they do things. When there's a whole bunch of big news going on, they slide it in and you don't even notice it. 5G doesn't have much range, so it requires many more towers than the 4G network. Every time you move past or drive past or walk past a 5G tower, it will ping and locate you and track your device. So whatever device you have on you, if it's a cell phone, then it's going to track you. And I thought it worked differently, but basically my understanding of it is it's the sheer volume of these 5G transmitters that makes it to where they can pinpoint you a lot more accurately than they could before. Because, like I said just a moment ago, as you drive past them, it goes ping, ping, ping. So it can kind of determine how fast you're going and, what you're traveling in. Oh, is he walking? Is he going a walking speed? Is he in city traffic, or is he out on the highway, or she, or whatever, So just one of the many more Orwellian things that they're sliding in, like, scanning your license plate as you drive by and taking pictures of you at intersections when you're not doing anything wrong, or when they deem that you've turned on a red or some silly thing like that, or you pulled up too far into the crosswalk area and they didn't like that, whatever. Big Brother is there. It's already in place, and this spy network will never decrease, only increase. Okay, now we're going to talk about something that doesn't get spoken about a lot, at least to my knowledge, and it's natural rights. And I kind of understand why people don't go down this road, because it leads to God, basically, and a lot of people aren't going to like that. It leads to first laws, and it leads to private property rights and stuff like that. And the Founding Fathers were real big into natural rights. It was an understanding that they all had these natural rights. And if you really want to understand the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, you have to understand these natural rights. So I recommend you go and do your own research. It's going to take a lot of work, man, because it's a voluminous topic. It goes real deep. So I'm going to read you a little bit here just to kind of give you a brief overview of what it means, just so we're all on the same page. Natural rights are rights granted to all people by nature or God that cannot be denied or restricted by any government or individual. Cannot be denied or restricted by any government or individual. I mean, these are really important rights. Natural rights are often said to be granted to people by natural law. Again, this is how I could go ahead and define natural law, but again, it's so big, it's such a big topic that the whole video would have to be about that, and you guys probably don't want to go on that. If you do want to know more about it and want to debate about it, please post down in the comments. We can go back and forth on it, but that's where it comes from. All rights are granted to all people by nature or by God, and they cannot be denied. I mean, it's pretty powerful. So, businesses have been ordered to shutter, and many of them will not survive the loss of income, especially like your mom and pop's places, those little, greasy spoon spots that you love to go and eat. Man, they're going to have a real hard time getting through this. The big corporations aren't going to struggle that much. They'll be there. So far, this has caused roughly 1/3 of the workforce to be unemployed. 17 million Americans so far have filed for initial unemployment claims over the last few weeks. And to be honest with you, I really don't trust those numbers. Those numbers that are coming from government offices, they're doctored in such a way to paint a better picture than there really is often. So be aware of that. Kind of like inflation, how they took food out of the inflation chart. I mean, food is like the most important thing that should be in the inflation chart, at least in my opinion. I mean, you got to have it to live, right? Okay, so back to what we were talking about. So the unemployment's way up. A total unlike anything the country has seen in modern times, and maybe ever, man. I mean, this is crazy unemployment. As a result of this, media sensationalism and fear-based reaction, the stock market crashed and 401ks were decimated. So, if you've been saving your money in a 401k and trying to do the right thing and invest for the future, things are looking pretty rough right now. And I don't know what to tell you. I'm not a stock market guy, so I can't tell you that. I invest in livestock and agriculture and lead and brass, stuff like that. Important things, water, canned foods. So I believe that forced business closures is an act of property seizure. This is a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment and natural rights. This is an unreasonable seizure of property with no warrant. As a property or business owner, it's not merely about ownership or possession of a property. It's about the freedom to use that property as you see fit, within the federal limits and state and local laws, of course. But here's the clincher. Those laws must comply with the United States Constitution, no matter how inconvenient it may be to them and their current agenda. And, we're going to have to remind them of that because they have forgotten. Next up here, the enslavement of our children. So, a private company, the Fed, teamed up with the corporate lobbyists that control Congress. They got the dumbest socialists in the room to come up with a plan to save the economy. They're going to print us out of this trouble, they say. So don't worry, man. They're going to, daddy government's going to come in, save you, and give you $1,200. Don't worry. When that doesn't work out, though, the media will point a finger at, well, you know who they'll point a finger at. First, it was $2 trillion. Now they're talking about $6 trillion. Hell, why not make it 10? I mean, the sky's the limit. You got the controls, right? Just put more ink in there. Put more paper in. Just print us into oblivion. What's the limit? What's backing up that money? Nothing. It's thin air. It's coming out of thin air. It's coming out of my savings account. It kind of pisses me off. I don't know about you, but I don't like that. I don't want the $1,200. I want my business back. I want my friends' businesses back. So, socialist government handouts, they've decided this for us. Socialist government handouts are coming in the form of borrowed fiat currency that will enslave our children and further reduce the dollar's value. Perhaps this could even usher in hyperinflation. How long until we see a $10,000 bill, a $1 million bill? Don't believe me? Don't think it's possible? Check out Zimbabwe. They've already done it. Now, this is not Zimbabwe, but this is a possibility that you could see. Look at that. Imagine carrying around some of them in your wallet. Boy, wouldn't you feel special? Until you found out that it wouldn't even buy a loaf of bread. Are you still excited about that $1,200? Is that going to be weekly or monthly or what? I mean, $1,200 one-time payment? What are we talking about here? And do I have to pay taxes on that? Free mailbox money? And remember, people, there's no such thing as free anything in this world. Nothing. Nothing is free. Do you want that fat business loan that you may or may not have to pay back to the federal government? Wouldn't that be considered a gift? Wouldn't that be considered full-blown socialism? I think so. What kind of strings are attached to that loan? There are so many more unanswered questions that haven't even been addressed. And that's a fault of the media. That's a fault of the biased media. They have a political agenda, and the agenda doesn't. The American people are not the agenda. Their politics is the agenda, and as long as they're allowed to do this, basically have the only mouthpiece. And before you tell me, oh well, what about Fox News? Well, Fox News used to be conservative a lot more than they are now, and Fox News has to try to be fair and balanced so that the liberals will like them, and that never works. So why do they keep trying? Why don't they just go back with what made them good to begin with? Stop bringing these liberals on to show the other side and try to be fair and balanced. Forget that. Do they try to be fair and balanced? So let's get back to these unanswered questions here. I'll ask them since no one else will. Has the Constitution been suspended? If so, for how long? Any suspension of the Constitution is a breach of contract. Are we losing our liberty? Have we traded it for the guise of safety? Are we any safer as a result of these measures? These are the questions we should be asking our elected officials and ourselves. I would argue, if you haven't, before you ask your elected official, ask yourself. And again, do your own research. Don't take my word for any of this stuff. I'd never dream of telling a fellow liberty-loving American how to think, live, or what you should or shouldn't do. Nor will I grant that right to anyone else to tell me how I should live. I will leave you with one last quote that contains a powerful message. Liberty, once lost, is lost forever. John Adams. God bless the Constitution. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hit me up in the comments if you want to discuss this. If you think I'm way off base, if you think all of this stuff is just going to disappear afterwards and we're just going to all go back to normal, and the government and all the people and all the other nations aren't going to remember how easy it was to come in and restrict the movement of the American people and how we acted like sheep and we never questioned anything, or you're going to be the one that questions with boldness. That's me. I'm going to try to question with boldness. So anyways, guys, again, I appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.